A blaze resembling lava flows burns in the destroyed grain silos at the port of Beirut in Lebanon. Residents are worried that the fire will weaken the silos' cement and steel, causing the silos to fully collapse. More details on this later in the news. Good evening, I am Nina Brichi Alago Flores, and this is Mata ng Agila International. And now for the headlines. Operatives headed by the Bureau of Customs raid two warehouses in Pampanga and Bulacan, seizing sacks of allegedly smuggled sugar. National Security Advisor Clarita Carlos visits Pagasa Island in the Kalayaan group of islands within the West Philippine Sea. Flash floods and mudslides kill 16 people and leave dozens missing in China's Qinghang province. Taiwan and the United States announced plans for trade talks in early autumn. And Russian Defense Ministry accuses Ukraine of planning a nuclear provocation at the Zaporizhzhia plant on Friday. The Bureau of Customs has discovered thousands of sacks of sugar in a warehouse in Pampanga, believed to be imported from Thailand. Another warehouse in Bulacan was also found with sacks of sugar. For the details, here's Madeline Villar Moratillo.
Amid reports of a sugar shortage, Bureau of Customs operatives have found thousands of sacks of sugar in separate warehouses in Pampanga and Bulacan. The joint operations also included operatives from the Armed Forces of the Philippines, Department of Trade and Industry, Sugar Regulatory Administration, and Department of Agriculture. The first warehouse is located in Lison Building, Barangay del Pilar in San Fernando City, where the new public market is also situated. The sacks of sugar were reported to be imported from Thailand. Aside from sugar, operatives also found sacks of other imported products like cornstarch from China, flour, plastic products, cooking oil in plastic barrels, motorcycle parts, and various brands of vehicle tires, helmets, LED television sets, and paint. The team also met Jimmy Nang, a Filipino-Chinese who is said to be the warehouse keeper. The warehouse owner has 15 days to present documents that will prove the legality of the imports. The team proceeded to another warehouse in San Jose del Monte, Bulacan, reportedly owned by Victor Teng Chua. He was invited to the police station for further investigation after failing to present a permit from the SRA. The authorities are also looking into his possible involvement in a large-scale hoarding of sugar. BOC says almost 44,000 sacks of sugar were confiscated, amounting to 220 million pesos. If the products are found smuggled, the owners of the warehouses will be charged with smuggling under the Customs Modernization Act. Upon the directive of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., Executive Secretary Victor Rodriguez ordered the raids on the basis of the BOC's power to visit customs banded warehouse and check on the inventory of imported agri-products. Madeline Villar Moratillo reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Malacanang has confirmed a consensus was achieved to import 150,000 metric tons of sugar. How was this agreement reached? Let's find out in this report by Mayan Corvera.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. met with sugar farmers and industry stakeholders on Wednesday to discuss and address the supply issues and rise in prices of sugar. The meeting that lasted 2 hours was also attended by Senate President Juan Miguel Zubiri, Vice Governor Jeffrey Ferrer of Negros Occidental, and businessman Lance Gokongwei. Zubiri said the president discussed with the stakeholders the government's efforts to improve local sugar production and the possible importation of sugar, which will go directly to industrial and household consumers.
Si Presidente patawag sa amin through Executive Secretary Vic Rodriguez at ang hiningi po niya yung mga information na kailangan niya para maka-desisyon sila kung may kulang ba ng asukal sa bansa, meron ba tayong sapat na supply at kung gaano kalaki ang demand.
Based on consumer demand, the country needs to import half of the botched 300,000 metric tons indicated in the unauthorized sugar order number 4. Press Secretary Trixie Angeles confirmed a consensus was reached to import 150,000 metric tons of sugar. Zubiri said the stakeholders thanked the president for rejecting proposals to over-import sugar, which would affect 5 million sugar farmers, workers, and other sectors in the sugar industry. He said they also presented to President Marcos possible short- and long-term solutions to lower prices on the market.
Dinala po natin dyan, kompleto po yung grupo, mga farmers representing the farmers, organizations, millers organization, yung mga sugar mills, nandiyan din yung mga refiners, sugar workers, kompleto yung dinala po namin grupo at kahapon para makapag-meeting sa ating Pangulo. And ang kagandahan nito ay nagkaroon po ng consensus ang lahat ng organizations that before the milling starts fully, yung sugar milling period starts fully on October, we may need to import, according to the stakeholders na ito, there's a need to import about no more than 150,000 metric tons.
Mean Corvera reporting for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
National Security Advisor Dr. Clarita Carlos has visited Pagasa Island in the Kalayaan group of islands within the West Philippine Sea. The Western Command of the Armed Forces of the Philippines released photos of her visit. Westcom Commander Vice Admiral Alberto Carlos said Dr. Carlos's visit bespeaks their common aspiration, strong stand, and unwavering dedication to protecting the people and the state under their responsibility. After a meeting with them, Westcom at the Antonio Bautista Air Base, Secretary Carlos flew to Pagasa Island via military aircraft. On the island, she met with local officials, military and other uniformed personnel, as well as local residents. Pagasa Island is located west of Puerto Princesa City, Palawan. It is part of the Kalayaan group of islands, which the Philippines claims as part of its territory and the Spratlys. Aside from her National Security Advisor post, Secretary Carlos is also the concurrent chair of the National Task Force for the West Philippine Sea. The Chinese ambassador to the Philippines has paid a courtesy call on President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. in Malacanang. Vin Pascua reports.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. met with Chinese ambassador to the Philippines Wang Xilian after the latter paid a courtesy call on him at the palace. Both shared photos of their meeting on their social media pages. In a Facebook post, President Marcos expresses his gratitude for the visit of the Chinese envoy. He adds that he looks forward to further strengthening the relationship between the two countries for the benefit of the people. For his part, Ambassador Wang says he is grateful for the warm welcome and conversation with President Marcos. Wang is also confident that China-Philippines relations will further grow and achieve more benefits in the years to come under the strategic guidance of President Marcos and Chinese President Xi Jinping. Malacanang has yet to give further details on the meeting. Press Secretary Trixie Cruz Angeles says they will let the Department of Foreign Affairs take charge of diplomatic affairs and information dissemination.
Wala pa po tayong impormasyon doon tulad ng parati nating sinasabi kapag diplomatic affairs. Hindi po kasi ordinarily or mabilis kayong maglalabas ng balita. Dumadaan pa po muna yan sa DFA tungkol, in accordance with our diplomatic relations and with the constitutional provision on information.
This is Vin Pascua reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Department of Education announced that 21.8 million learners have enrolled for school year 2022-2023, which is set to start next week. Based on the latest data from the Learner Information System, DepEd said the number of registered students has reached a total of 21,837,853 for the incoming school year. Of this number, 19,233,796 learners are enrolled in public schools. 2,531,715 are in private schools, and 72,342 are in state or local universities and colleges that offer basic education. Region 4A still has the largest number of enrollees with 3,142,716, followed by Region 3 with 2,419,137, and the National Capital Region with 2,330,450. Those who have yet to enroll are encouraged to register as soon as possible through any of the 3 enrollment methods: in-person, remote, and drop-box enrollment. The enrollment period started on July 25 and will end on the first day of classes, which is on August 22. Meanwhile, Vice President Sara Duterte is set to visit a school in Luzon, outside Metro Manila, during the opening of classes. For his part, DepEd spokesperson Michael Poa says the data on the number of schools that will implement face-to-face classes, blended learning, and full-distance learning are still coming in from various regional offices. With the emergence of new COVID variants, a lawmaker deemed it necessary to vaccinate preschoolers against COVID-19 as well. Vic Somintak has the details.
Representative Lawrence Defensor filed a resolution urging the national government to let children 3 to 4 years old be vaccinated against COVID-19. Under House Resolution 263, Defensor said children from the said age group should also be inoculated to ensure safety from infection. He added that the age group belongs to the most vulnerable amid rising cases caused by the news of variants. Last February, the Department of Health launched the Rest Bakuna Kids campaign to vaccinate children 5 to 11 years old, but those younger than 5 were still not eligible for the jobs. Defensor said in June, the Food and Drug Administration of the U.S. issued emergency use authorization to vaccines manufactured by Moderna and Pfizer to be administered to individuals 6 months to 17 years old. Although the congressman noted that the infections among children 5 years old and below are not that high compared to the adult population, he said government cannot set aside the threat of the virus to the pediatric population, especially since it has started easing COVID-19 restrictions in the country. Defensor also lauded the Department of Health effort to inoculate children amid the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic and the resumption of the face-to-face classes this year. Vic Sumentak reporting for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Next on Mata ng Agila International, flash floods killed 16 in northwest China. Russia says Ukraine is planning a man-made nuclear disaster during the UN chief's visit to Ukraine. And Israel shuts down NGOs and kills a Palestinian in occupied West Bank. Stay tuned for more stories around the world. We will be back.
Welcome ka-shoppers sa isa na namang edisyon ng fun-filled shopping kung saan wala na kayong hahanapin pa dahil nandito na lahat ang kailangan nyo dito sa Shopping All the Way with Jojo A.
Para sa mahilig sa food, eat na hit na yan. Sa mahilig sa fashion, dyan things na yan. Kung pre-loved items naman ang hanap ninyo, may okay na ukay tayo.
Yun! And this is Shopping All the Way with
Jojo A.
Panalo tayo pag together, walang talo pag together, let's get together. So let's 25.
sa isa na namang edisyon ng fun-filled shopping kung saan wala na kayong hahanapin pa dahil nandito na lahat ang kailangan nyo dito sa Shopping All the Way with Jojo A.
Para sa mahilig sa food, eat na hit na yan. Sa mahilig sa fashion, dyan things na yan. Kung pre-loved items naman ang hanap ninyo, may okay na ukay tayo.
Yun! And this is Shopping All the Way with
Jojo A.
This portion is brought.
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. At least 16 people are dead and dozens are missing in flash floods in northwest China after a sudden downpour triggered mudslides and caused a river to change course. State-run CCTV said the flooding occurred in a mountainous region of Datong County in Qinghai Province, affecting about 6,200 people from 6 villages. The deluge comes during a summer of extreme weather in China, with multiple cities clocking their hottest days on record. Meanwhile, according to the state media report, frontline headquarters have been set up to organize the emergency response. It said the rescue work was progressing in an orderly manner. Scientists say extreme weather across the world has become more frequent due to climate change and will likely grow more intense as temperatures rise. Taiwan and the United States announced plans for trade talks in early autumn, as a senior U.S. diplomat warned Beijing would continue to squeeze the self-ruled democracy. The Office of the U.S. Trade Representative said the negotiations would cover a variety of areas, including agriculture, digital trade, regulatory practices, and removing trade barriers. Taiwan hailed the announcement of the talks, dubbed the U.S.-Taiwan Initiative on the 21st Century Trade, as a chance to deepen ties with Washington and other nations as it seeks greater recognition from the international community. The United States and Taiwan share a long-standing trade and investment relationship. Taiwan is also a crucial global supplier of some of the most advanced semiconductors used in everything, from mobile phones and laptops to cars and missiles. Undeniably, China is still the island's largest trading partner, having 42% of Taiwan's exports brought to China and Hong Kong, compared to only 15% delivered to the United States. China views Taiwan as its own territory to be seized one day by force if necessary, and bristles at any perceived treatment of it as a sovereign nation-state. Washington diplomatically recognizes Beijing over Taipei, but it maintains de facto relations with Taiwan and supports the island's rights to decide its future. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs voiced Beijing's opposition to the planned U.S.-Taiwan trade talks.
一贯反对任何国家与中国台湾地区商签任何具有主权意涵和官方性质的经贸协定。我们要求美方以实际行动恪守一个中国原则和中美3个联合公报规定，停止任何形式的美台官方往来。 不得与中国台湾地区商签具有主权意涵和官方性质的协定，不得借经贸名义向台独分裂势力发出任何错误信号，不要一错再错。中方将采取坚决措施。
Spokesman Wang Wenbin says China will take firm measures to defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity, advising the U.S. not to make any misjudgment. It can be recalled that tensions in the Taiwan Strait have soared to their highest in years after U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taipei, sparking a furious response from Beijing, which launched its largest military drills around the world. Ukraine plans to carry out artillery strikes on the Russia-controlled Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant on Friday, and then accused Russia of causing a disaster at the site, the Russian Defense Ministry said. Russian military spokesman Igor Konashenkov reported that Kyiv has deployed units trained in responding to the use of weapons of mass destruction, pre-positioning them to report a radiation leak and demonstrate a purported action to mitigate it. The ministry also claimed that the predicted attack will be timed to coincide with the ongoing visit to Ukraine by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. The ministry expects a Ukrainian artillery unit to attack the plant on Friday from the city of Nikopol. During the briefing, Konashenkov also denied Ukrainian claims that Russia has deployed heavy weapons at the Zaporizhzhia plant and is attacking Ukrainian troops from the site. He said the only Russian troops at the facility are lightly armed guards providing physical security, as the ministry pledged to do its best to prevent damage to the nuclear facility. Separately, Igor Kirillov, who heads Russia's nuclear, biological, and chemical defense troops, said its directorate has modeled possible scenarios for a disaster at the plant. Kirillov warned that a plume of radioactive materials from the site may reach Poland, Slovakia, and Germany. Russia has accused Ukraine of conducting frequent drone and artillery strikes against a nuclear power plant in the city of Energodar over the past few weeks. However, Kyiv has denied responsibility, saying Russian forces were attacking the plant to discredit Ukraine. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, seized by the Russian military, needs to be inspected immediately. Stoltenberg says it is urgent that the International Atomic Energy Agency be allowed in and Russian forces withdrawn from the plant.
This is the biggest exercise the battle group has conducted to date. Really, it's a test to see if all the training we've done leading up to this event have ensured that we can operate as a team that operates very efficiently and can communicate across a formation, in order for Colonel Kahayev, the battle group commander, to conduct mission command and control over his formation.
Russia is calling on the International Atomic Energy Agency to visit the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant to fulfill its mandate as the UN's nuclear watchdog. Russian diplomat Igor Vishnevetsky urged the IAEA to make a mission soon and vowed that Russia will do its best to facilitate it. The inspection was supposed to happen some time ago, the senior diplomat added, but was derailed not due to a fault of the Moscow. Vishnevetsky pointed the finger at Ukraine, saying that its regular attacks on the nuclear site made the area not safe for IAEA monitors. The Russian diplomat stressed that people should not use artillery or other weapons against nuclear power plants. He added that though the Ukrainian side knows it very well, it effectively commits acts of nuclear terrorism at the site. The Ukrainian power plant, the largest of its kind in Europe, comes under regular artillery shelling. One projectile this week reportedly struck a space 10 meters from a container holding spent nuclear fuel. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's motorcade has been seen in Lviv, where he will meet with Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky and UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. The Turkish president is set to deliver a message that Ankara is approaching the conflict between Moscow and Kyiv with a balanced policy and is still ready to host ceasefire talks. Sources familiar with Erdogan's visit told the press that it was no coincidence that the Turkish president decided to travel to Ukraine after meeting Russian President Vladimir Putin in Sochi last August 5. The two leaders had a long 4-hour conversation where they also agreed that Turkey would make partial payments for Russian gas in local currencies. Erdogan also plans to discuss with Zelensky their strategic-level bilateral relations, while his meeting with Guterres in Odessa will center on the facilitation of the grain, which was also brokered by the UN. Another source said Erdogan's visit was also being used to make a point to the Turkish public that he is an international leader who can speak to both sides and maintain neutral relationships that can both achieve peace and preserve Turkey's commercial interests. Uniper, the highest-profile corporate victim of Europe's energy crisis so far, reported a 12.3 billion euro loss or $12.5 billion loss due to Russian gas supply cuts, saying it had become a pawn in the energy standoff between the European Union and Moscow. Chief Executive Klaus-Dieter Maubach said Uniper has been playing a crucial role in stabilizing Germany's gas supply at the cost of billions in losses resulting from the sharp drop in gas deliveries from Russia. The company also advised that it may not post a profit until 2024, despite a £15 billion government bailout last month. It also refused to give an outlook for this year as gas flows from Russia dwindle. Uniper, whose shares fell 8%, said this would significantly reduce losses from the fourth quarter onwards. Israeli security forces raided the offices of multiple Palestinian human rights groups in the occupied West Bank, which the state has branded terrorist organizations. The military said soldiers and police officers closed 7 institutions and confiscated property in the overnight raids. At the Ramallah offices of human rights group Al-Haq, the front door had been welded shut and a Hebrew statement was left, saying it would remain closed for security reasons. Al-Haq is one of the 6 Palestinian groups branded terrorist organizations by Israel in October for their alleged links to leftist militant group, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, or PFLP. Last month, 9 European countries said they would continue to cooperate with the 6 groups after no substantial information was received from Israel to justify their terror designation. West Bank cities are nominally under the full control of the Palestinian Authority, but the Israeli security forces carry out frequent incursions, which are often met with stones or petrol bombs. Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz announced that the terror designation of the 3 groups had passed into law. The other 3, which had challenged their terror designations, had their appeals rejected, a statement from Gantz's office said. Israeli forces additionally raided the offices of a 7th organization, the Union of Health Work Committees, which was banned by Israel from working in the West Bank in 2020. Up next, CDC study suggests polio may have been spreading in New York since April. Children's remains found in suitcases bought by a family at an auction in New Zealand. And huge Portugal fire under control for now. We've got more news coming your way when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Glass skin, glow, whitening, collagen. Ilan lang yan sa paulit-ulit nating nakikita at naririnig na pampaganda. At dumarami pa rin ang mga beauty products na available sa atin, whether from local producers or imported ones. There is no doubt that beauty is big business. Pag-uusapan natin kung ano nga ba ang kahalagahan ng skincare routine, overall wellness for health and beauty, at paano maging beautiful at healthy kahit tight ang budget. Para lang ba ito sa mga younger ones or pwede rin sa mga young ones? Paano rin ba ang iba't ibang paraan kung paano tayo kikita sa napakalaking industriya ng pagpapaganda? Aalamin natin yan together with our guest, Miss Jeannie Uy, the CEO and President of Nutravita International Corporation, National Stockist of Avita, and Avita Diamond President, only here at Open for Business.
My vision for this Avita platform is to see more and more Filipinos having that success in health and wealth. Tayong mga Pilipino, kayang-kaya natin ito. Health is the #1 wealth now.
Open for Business with Cesar Vallejos, Sunday, 9 p.m.
Flash floods have hit London as UK endures more calamitous weather. Torrential thunderstorms have hit the British capital. The downpours caused disruptions to public transportation. The power was off in a number of areas. One hospital was also flooded, prompting officials to tell people to stay away unless they had a life-threatening condition. The storms moved across the English Channel to France and neighboring countries. For the past several weeks, a heat wave has scorched the UK and left a drought, which the country parched. Officials said a massive forest fire in Portugal is under control after raging for days, but more than 1,000 firefighters are still battling to keep it contained. The huge fire in the Serra da Estrela National Park in central Portugal was brought under control last week, only to restart again Monday. More than 25,000 hectares of land is estimated to have been scorched by the fire in the UNESCO-listed park, which is home to diverse wildlife species, including wildcats and lizards. Civil Protection Commander Miguel Oliveira told the fire is under control, but it is not yet extinguished. Fire is more likely to be reactivated, but they hope they do not take on worrying proportions. Since the start of the year, some 92,000 hectares has burned in Portugal, in the worst fire since 2017. Experts say climate change driven by human activity is boosting the intensity and frequency of extreme weather events, such as heat waves, droughts, and wildfires. Studies are underway to see whether genetic changes in the monkeypox virus are driving the rapid spread of the disease. The World Health Organization told AFP that the two distinct variants of the virus are called the Congo Basin in Central Africa and West African clades, after the two regions where they are each endemic. On Friday, the WHO renamed the groupings as Clade 1 and Clade 2 respectively to avert the risk of geographic stigmatization. It also announced that Clade 2 has two subclades, 2A and 2B, with viruses within the latter identified as being behind the current global outbreak. On Wednesday, the UN Health Agency specified that clades 2A and 2B share a recent common ancestor. Therefore, 2B is not an offshoot of 2A. Clade 2B contains viruses collected in the 1970s and from 2017 onwards. There is also no information yet on what the mutations mean in terms of how the virus interacts with the human immune response. Experts at the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention suggested that the first case of polio in over a decade was reported in New York City last month. It explained that while the original transmission may have come from abroad, the unvaccinated young adult who suffered paralysis had not traveled internationally. CDC said the contracted strain is related to polioviruses reported in the UK and Israel recently, a strain that is linked to the polio vaccine. According to CDC, the U.S. stopped using the oral polio vaccine in 2000, which means the chain of transmission originated from someone who received the oral vaccine outside the country. Infections can happen when live oral vaccines are given to communities with low vaccine coverage, experts warned, as this increases the risk for additional cases of paralytic polio, a form of infection causing paralysis. Health authorities also tested 3 other people they suspect may have polio but have tested negative so far. CDC classified them as persons under investigation. Though no additional cases of paralytic polio have been confirmed, CDC warned that detection of the virus in wastewater samples collected over the course of more than 2 months in Rockland and Orange indicates community transmission. United Nations Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet says it remains unsafe for Rohingya refugees to return to their homes in Myanmar. It has been nearly 5 years since a crackdown there sparked an exodus to neighboring Bangladesh. Nearly 1 million members of the mostly Muslim minority live in a squalid patchwork of refugee settlements near Bangladesh's southern coast. Most fled their homes after a 2017 Myanmar army offensive that is now subject to a landmark genocide case at the UN's top court. 5 years later, the refugees refused to go back without guarantees for their safety and rights in Myanmar, which is now ruled by a military junta after the ouster of its civilian government last year. Bachelet met with Rohingya community members during a tour of the camps on Tuesday and said they had expressed resounding hope that they would be able to go back to their homes.
I'm very worried about increasing anti-Rohingya rhetoric in Bangladesh, stereotyping and scapegoating Rohingya as the source of crime and other problems.
Bangladesh has become increasingly impatient with the presence of its huge refugee population. And Bachelet says she is concerned about increasing anti-Rohingya rhetoric and scapegoating of the community. A fire continues to rage in the destroyed grain silos at the port of Lebanon's capital of Beirut. The silos were heavily damaged 2 years ago when a stockpile of ammonium nitrate caught fire and exploded. For the past couple of weeks, a fire has been smoldering away, the result of the grain fermenting in the summer heat. The burning grain now resembles a lava flow, as you would see from volcanoes. Nearby residents worry if the fire continues, it will cause the silos to fully collapse. According to a local report, the Lebanese government has approved a plan to demolish some of the silos and remove the source of the fire. But families of the more than 200 people who died in the explosion want them preserved as a memorial to the victims. The high cost of living has sparked more protests in the Argentinian capital of Buenos Aires. Thousands of trade unionists flooded the streets downtown, snarling traffic on major roads. Many of those protesting came from outside of the city. They are calling for higher wages, better social support, and measures to combat inflation. Argentina has one of the highest inflation rates in Latin America. Since the beginning of the year, the cost of living has risen by more than 46%. 4 out of 10 Argentines live in poverty and can't make ends meet. Middle-class wages are being eroded by higher prices, and many of those people could find themselves below the poverty line if inflation is not tamed. River traffic on the Rhine in Germany has ground to a halt after a damaged freighter blocked the waterway. The freighter suffered a technical fault. It couldn't have come at a worse time. Water transport is already feeling the effects of a drought, which has seen the water level in the Rhine drop to a critical point. Authorities figured it can't be cleared within a day. Because of low water levels, vessels have had to reduce their loads to avoid the risk of running aground. About 4% of freight is transported on waterways in Germany, including the Rhine. New Zealand police confirmed that human remains found in 2 suitcases bought at an Auckland auction were of 2 primary school-age teenagers, with officers vowing to find those responsible. Detective Inspector Tofilao Paamanuia Baaleya said the bodies are likely to have been in storage for several years and the victims are thought to have been between 5 and 10 years old. Baaleya said the nature of this discovery provides some complexities to the investigation, given the time lapse between the time of death and the time of discovery. The children have not yet been identified, but household and personal items found alongside the suitcases are helping to provide clues. Moreover, both the storage unit and property where the suitcases were taken have been thoroughly examined by forensic experts. Baaleya also revealed that police in New Zealand are working with the International Criminal Agency Interpol in their investigation. Former U.S. Vice President Mike Pence said he would consider testifying before the Democratic-run House Committee on the January 6, 2021 riot, where Trump supporters stormed Congress.
Any invitation to be directed to me, I would have to reflect on the unique role that I was serving in as Vice President. It'd be unprecedented in history for a Vice President to be summoned to testify on Capitol Hill. But as I said, I don't want to prejudge. If there's ever any formal invitation rendered to us, we'd give it due consideration. But
speaking during an event in New Hampshire, Pence added that he had differences with former U.S. President Donald Trump.
January 6th was a tragic day in the history of our country, not just for those of us that lived through it at the Capitol, but for every American. I mean, to see our historic Capitol ransacked, I must tell you, angered me that day. But let me begin by saying, look, it's fairly well known that President Trump and I have had our differences.
According to CNN, former U.S. President Donald Trump is considering making public the surveillance footage of the FBI executing a search warrant at his Mar-a-Lago resort in hopes of firing up his political base. The news agency also reported that some of Trump's allies are pushing the former president to release the CCTV footage from the raid, suggesting that the images could be used in campaign-style advertisements to further Trump's political persecution narrative ahead of a possible 2024 campaign. Some outlets say Trump has already used the incident to his advantage. He raised up to $1 million a day in donations, soliciting his supporters through a flurry of emails denouncing the search. But the recommendation to release the footage has elicited varied responses within his circle. One person close to Trump told the outlet that the surveillance footage in question has been so tightly guarded by Trump's aides that it's unclear whether Trump or himself has even viewed it in full yet. Coming right up, Apple reportedly diversifying production away from China. LeBron James signs $97 million two-year extension with Lakers. And elephant in Pakistan treated for jumbo-sized dental problem. Catch the latest in business, sports, and more when we come back.
Popcorn.
Mayroong isang lalaki, malapit na siyang mabuhay.
Sir, ano pong masasabi niyo sa panahon po ngayon? Kasi po LDR po kami ng boyfriend ko.
May bandang kanan ba yung kaliwa? Dito.
We are G22! Ngayon gagawin namin ang Bawal Tumawa Challenge.
Oh no! It's Biro only!
It's B.O.
Sa Net 25.
Biro only, bro.
Sa isa na namang edisyon ng fun-filled shopping kung saan wala na kayong hahanapin pa dahil nandito na lahat ang kailangan nyo dito sa Shopping All the Way with Jojo A.
Para sa mahilig sa food, eat na hit na yan. Sa mahilig sa fashion, then things na yan. Kung pre-loved items naman ang hanap ninyo, may okay na ukay tayo.
Iyon! And this is Shopping All the Way with
Jojo A.
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. An Indian man was caught attempting to smuggle out a menagerie of live animals at Thailand's main airport. 21-year-old Abhilash Anaduri was found with 17 live creatures of 6 species, including a white desert fox, a raccoon, 2 iguanas, and a pair of white pythons, as well as 3 monitor lizards and 8 marmoset monkeys. Officials estimated the creatures would be worth around $2,760 or about 154,000 pesos. All of the animals were found in plastic baskets, hidden underneath snacks, and packed in luggage. Upon discovery, they were sent for medical checkups, while Anaduri has been charged with wildlife smuggling and detained for questioning by police. Problems with the battery in a spacesuit cut short a spacewalk by 2 Russian cosmonauts. More than 2 hours after he exited the International Space Station, Oleg Artemyev was ordered to return to the airlock. The orders came after he reported abnormal voltage readings for his spacesuit's battery. The U.S. and Russian space agencies say Artemyev was never in any danger. He made his way back to the airlock and connected to the station's main power. He then waited for the second cosmonaut, Denis Medvedev, to gather up their tools and return to the airlock. Before the battery issue, the 2 cosmonauts installed 2 cameras outside the space station. Hong Kong shares closed deep in negative territory Thursday. The fall was in line with a sell-off across world markets after Federal Reserve minutes fanned concerns that interest rates will continue to rise and be held elevated until inflation is tamed. The Hang Seng Index sank 0.80% or 158.54 points to end at 19,763.91. The Shanghai Composite Index shed 0.46% or 14.98 points to 3,277.54, while the Shenzhen Composite Index on China's second exchange lost 0.26% or 5.92 points to 2,236.53. Nikkei news agency reports that Apple is in talks to produce watches and MacBooks in Vietnam to broaden production away from China. The impending business move would be the first time that Apple Watches and MacBooks have been assembled in Vietnam. Before, only iPads and AirPods were produced in the country. Apple, which has almost entirely depended on China for its production for decades, started diversifying after then U.S. President Donald Trump launched a trade war against Beijing. The current move also comes amid a new spike in tensions between the U.S. and China, provoked by the recent visit of U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan. Four-time NBA champion LeBron James has agreed to a 2-year contract extension with the Los Angeles Lakers for $97.1 million. The deal includes a player option for the 2024 to 2025 season, giving him the chance to play alongside his eldest son, Bronny, a top high school prospect in Los Angeles. The contract could be worth $111 million if the salary cap makes a major jump for the 2023 to 2024 season. Terms would give LeBron a career guaranteed total earnings of $532 million. Back in June, Forbes reported that James is the first active NBA player to become a billionaire through his career earnings and endorsements.
And it's our responsibility to.
Bruce Willis is struggling with his speech, but it looks like he can still jam out on the harmonica. Emma Hemming Willis, his wife of 13 years, posted a video of the movie star playing alongside musician Derek Richard Thomas on the guitar. In March, Hemming Willis and other family members announced that Willis has aphasia, a disorder that causes. The Japanese fashion designer Hanae Mori has died at her home in Tokyo at age 96. Public broadcaster NHK and other media outlets reported the news, saying a private family funeral had already taken place and giving the cause of Mori's death as old age. Nicknamed Madame Butterfly for her signature winged motif, Mori once said in an interview, "Fashion is something that pushes you, gives you the courage to spread your wings, and allows you to have adventures." Mori cracked the Parisian haute couture world, creating luxurious pieces worn by Nancy Reagan, Grace Kelly, and countless members of high society. She was also one of a tiny number of Japanese women to head an international corporation, but with growing losses in the early 2000s, her empire was largely sold off, and she shuttered her Paris atelier in 2004 after her last couture show there. Hanae Mori's boutiques remain open in Tokyo, and her fragrances are still sold worldwide. Dressed in jeans, sweatpants, and abayas, dozens of Ethiopian schoolgirls practice nailing a landing and finding their balance and confidence as they zip across a skate park in Addis Ababa. Some gingerly slide forward a few meters, holding a friend's hand for support, while others zoom across ramps and concrete bumps at full speed. The Ethiopian Girl Skaters is an all-female group set up by skateboarders Hosina Chala and Mickey Asfall. The girls, some as young as 6, are pushing back against gender stereotypes and having fun doing it.
It's not really common for a girl to start skating, and because people don't support you, but somebody had to be the first, some group had to start, and we were the first one, and I feel honored to be part of that.
Although Ethiopia is home to many skateboarding groups, they are largely dominated by male skaters. With time, the women skateboarders have learned to cope not just with the inevitable bruises the sport brings, but also with the criticism from naysayers.
It helped me to defeat my fears, to not give anything about what people say about me, what people say about me being a girl and doing such stuff, which is not something normal for the society, but I just enjoyed it. It makes me happy, even just I can't explain it.
In this pocket of capital Addis Ababa, the girls are very much on board with claiming their place on the ramps. And now a story about a jumbo-sized toothache of sorts. It involves an elephant, several veterinarians, and some specially designed dentist drills. The patient was a 16-year-old elephant named Bala at the Karachi Zoological Garden in Pakistan. Bala had a broken tusk and was in terrible pain. The root of the tusk was infected, so surgery was required. But the elephant could not be sedated because the zoo doesn't have the facilities and space for full anesthesia. That meant the animal had to remain standing during the operation. She was given painkillers and propped up with thick ropes and steel bars to keep her from falling. It took several hours for the vets to remove the broken tusk. They used a specially designed dentist drill to work on the mammoth-sized patient. Veterinarian Frank Goritz says it was a serious condition that could have been fatal if not treated, adding that there could have been other complications.
It's really bad. So you see, an infection is very painful. You can see that she is always rubbing on the right side. There's an abscess already, and the root of the tusk goes into the head, into the skull, and the distance to the eye is very close. So there's a danger if this infection goes further that they get blind.
Indeed, the world showcases a rich past. Here's a look back on what happened today in history. In 1227, Genghis Khan died at age 65. Starting from insignificant beginnings, he brought all the nomadic tribes of Mongolia into a rigidly disciplined military state. Khan has conquered much of Central Asia and made incursions into Eastern Europe, Persia, and India. In 1926, Larry Alcala, also known as the Dean of Filipino Cartoonists, was born in Daraga, Albay. He was one of the first to use Taglish with his Kalabog and Bosyo in 1947. During 50 years of cartooning, Larry Alcala made over 500 characters, 20 comic strips, 6 movies, 2 murals, and 15,000 published pages. And in 2018, the world's oldest cheese was found in a tomb of a high-ranking Egyptian official. Estimated to be 3,200 years old, the cheese was the first sizable chunk to be found in any kind of preserved state. To end our evening, here's a quote from Roman historian Sallust. Harmony makes small things grow. A lack of it makes great things decay. And that's a wrap for tonight's newscast. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I'm Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.